Chapter 2652. I'm going to a place and it might be very dangerous. Xian, stay here and wait for me, alright? Yiqing Luo tried her best to speak in a gentle tone. Not knowing if it was her misperception. Somehow she felt. After Zhou Xian was inflicted with the love worm, not only was his attachment towards her, he had a stubborn persistence. His intellect seemed to have been obstructed. Using old man Song's words. That was Zhou Xian didn't know how to think about anything other than her. He also didn't know how to think about anyone or anything other than her. He only knew how to stay by her side, hug her, look at her, not leaving her side for even a moment. Even earlier in Miao Rongrong's courtyard, Zhou Xian said, "This lord is not blind," was muttered softly in front of Zhou Xian before she appeared. Seemingly, except when he was facing her. He could still converse normally. But in front of others. He didn't seem to be able to see anyone else. Unless the others were implicated and had something to do with her. Luckily he had a respectable status. And he was temperamental. Even if he ignored others, they wouldn't think that he was affected by the worm, and would only think that he was in a bad mood and didn't want to bother with others. No. Zhou Xian, who was inflicted with the love worm, still knew how to reject. "I want to be with you." An expected answer. What Zhou Xian was talking about was the love worm. It was the love worm that formed an attachment towards her. Which meant to say he wanted to see her at all times. Zhou Xian would not let her leave alone. Yiqing Luo tiptoed and kissed his lips, smiling. Then, "Xian must listen to me and follow me." Zhou Xian nodded without hesitation. "All right." In the end he looked at her tenderly and added a sentence. "When we return, Lil Luo will give you a reward." He raised his hand and his slender fingers pointed to the place where Yiqing Luo had kissed earlier. Yiqing Luo. This fellow, was he really inflicted with the love worm? What happened to the promise of listening to her? Why did he still know how to negotiate terms with her? Ahem. Old man Song coughed awkwardly in his mind. Dizun is different from ordinary people. His willpower is also different from ordinary people. Naturally, he is different from other people who have been poisoned by the love goo. Yiqing Luo pinched Zhou Xian's handsome face fiercely. "All right. Reward." Zhou Xian immediately revealed a bewitching smile. "Right, let's go." Yiqing Luo pulled Zhou Xian's hand and quietly left in the direction of the soul-chasing powder. The moment the two of them left the corner, a tall and slender figure slowly appeared at the place where the two of them had been standing. The man's facial features were gentle and refined. Looking towards the direction where Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian had left, his brows were filled with pain. He raised his hand and pressed it against his chest. He had finally fallen in love with a girl. That woman, she already had a fiancé. He could tell. Yi Luo really loved Dizun. It was obvious how much the overlord loved Yi Luo. But, because they loved each other, that made his heart ache even more. The man closed his eyes slightly. His breathing was painful and weak. "Master. Tell me, how should I overcome this tribulation?" "Stay away from her." Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind. The man was startled and quickly turned his head around. What entered his eyes was a handsome man dressed in red robes. Although that man was dressed in red, but he emitted a sharp and icy cold aura. As though he had walked out from an ice cellar. His entire body was emitting a keep-away aura. Chapter 2653. That red-clothed man was Zhu Wuxin. "Young sect master Gu, she's not a woman you can dream about," Zhu Wuxin warned coldly. Gu Jingyu's body stiffened as he stared blankly at Zhu Wuxian's expressionless face. "Death God Castle's castle master, you also?" Zhu Wuxin's cold eyes swept over and Gu Jingyu's words were stuck in his throat. That gaze was as sharp as a blade, as if it wanted to leave countless scars on his body. Gu Jingyu's heart thumped fiercely. This time Gu Jingyu was completely dealt a heavy blow. He had originally thought that the woman he had taken a fancy to was the only woman in this world that he felt was worthy of him. But unexpectedly, in fact he was not worthy of her. Her fiancé was Dizun. There was also a Death God Castle lord who was her admirer. In comparison, he wasn't even worth a fart. Zhu Wuxin did not look at him again. He walked directly towards the direction where Yiqing Luo had left. Death God Castle's castle master." Gu Jingyu suddenly raised his head and called out to Zhu Wuxin. Zhu Wuxin's footsteps paused slightly, his cold eyes filled with obvious impatience. "She loves the overlord very much." Will you give her up? When Gu Jingyu asked this question, there was a voice in his heart asking him the same question. Zhou Xian didn't turn back. He continued to walk forward. The man's cold voice came with the wind. She will only be mine. Following the trail of the soul-chasing powder, Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian had already left Qingyue City. He had actually arrived, mass graves. The mass grave was extremely remote and dark. There was even a faint chilly breeze blowing past. Yiqing Luo had just neared this place when she acutely sensed that the airflow in the air was faintly mixed with some austere atmosphere. She grabbed Dmo Xian's arm tightly and quietly approached the direction of the soul-chasing powder. Did it fail? A cold voice sounded in a low voice. It was illusory and not real. Yiqing Luo immediately pinpointed the direction where the sound came from. She pulled Dmo Xian and leaned against the stone wall. Through the messy surroundings, Yiqing Luo could faintly see a tall and straight figure standing at the side of the mass grave. Fortunately, although Dmo Xian was poisoned by the love worm, his power was still there. The two of them held their breaths, not letting the person on the other side notice them. The man stood beside the mass grave. The air was filled with the smell of rotting corpses. It smelled awful and disgusting. However, that person didn't seem to be able to smell it. He raised an arm and seemed to be looking at something. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she clearly saw. That black thread was floating in that person's palm. His gaze swept to that person's face. His pupils constricted slightly. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold arc. As expected, it was him. Following the representative of the East Wave Continent's imperial family, little Princess Lan Ling Nua. The bodyguard whom Lan Ling Nua treated as her trump card, serene solitude. Ever since he saw the black lines in Miao Rongrong's eyes. Ever since he realized that Miao Yixiong seemed to have lost his mind. She had guessed that it might be related to Yuji. Because when they first met Yuji, she was on Yuji's body. She sensed a kind of profound yin qi which was similar to it. But Yiqing Luo was certain. Yuji wasn't the mysterious man who had been in contact with Miao Rongrong. Which meant there were at least two parties who looked for Miao Rongrong. Or perhaps Yuji and the mysterious man were in cahoots. Chapter 2654. The black thread was moving in his palm as though it was arguing about something. A thread like a living thing. It had its own thoughts. And it could talk to Yuji. Yiqing Luo expressed that it was really a rare sight. Yuji paused for a moment. Suddenly his fingertips pinched the moving black thread. If it's seen through, the mission will fail. How should I explain to the revered one? That black thread, the entire thread was twisted as though it was in extreme pain. Yuji seemed as though he couldn't feel the black thread on his fingertips as he coldly hooked his lips. The mission failed. It's all because of you. Improper control. Apologize to the revered one yourself. That tone was obviously a threat. The black thread seemed to be struggling. No one was willing to bear the wrath of the revered one. But in the end it still succumbed to Yuji's threat. The entire thread body hung limply on Yuji's fingers. Yuji's lips curled as his eyes flashed coldly. Then go and apologize now. Saying that, he threw that black thread directly into the mass grave. Under the special imprint of the soul-chasing powder, Yiqing Luo could clearly see that black thread, which was like a strand of hair, was like a snake speedily swimming in the wreckage of the corpses. In the tranquil mass grave, Yuji's cold and ethereal voice rang. Yin, other than apologizing, don't say anything else. The black thread paused slightly. Immediately after, it flashed and completely left the mass grave. Yiqing Luo didn't immediately chase after it. Only when the aura of the black thread, which was the fellow named Yin, completely disappeared, Yuji then slowly turned around, blended into the night and left the mass grave. It was silent for half an incense's time. Yiqing Luo then pulled Dmo Xian out of their hiding place. In the air she could still vaguely sense that extremely weak cold breath. She frowned slightly. A trace of blood-colored light faintly surfaced in her eyes, which disappeared in a flash. Hearing the name Yin, Yiqing Luo was already certain. The black thread and Yuji were in cahoots. They were both the subordinates of that so-called revered one. That revered one, who exactly was he? What was his motive? Why, she always felt that this revered one was always pestering her. Could it be, she had something that the venerable one wanted? Little Luo, Suddenly she heard the man's displeased voice. The force on his waist suddenly increased. Her face bumped into the man's thick chest. She collected her thoughts and looked up. She met the man's eyes, which were filled with her reflection. A chilly wind blew in the mass grave, fluttering Zhou Xian's black hair. It also blew on his purple robe. On top of that peerless beauty, that tempting face of crime. This level of breathtaking, even Yiqing Luo couldn't help but be bewitched. Don't think about anyone other than me. The man was very jealous and his tone was very obvious. I don't like you to look at other people. Yiqing Luo burst into laughter. Could it be that he was jealous because she had placed all her attention on Yuji just now? He was poisoned by the love goo. He was surprisingly honest. Moreover, his honesty was adorable. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles as she raised her hand and pinched his cheek. Ever since Zhou Xian was poisoned by the love worm, she had not moved at all and had her hands all over his face. If it was usual times, she dared to pinch his face. He dared to eat her up cleanly, not leaving any dregs behind. When they returned to the courtyard, she would look for Miao Yi to discuss about helping Zhou Xian to cure the goo. But there wouldn't be this chance in the future. It was rare that she could pinch him to her heart's content. Chapter 2655. I'm not going to look anymore, be good. Yiqing Luo beamed as she said that, as she tiptoed and kissed his thin lips. The current Zhou Xian. He was very easy to coax. As expected, after Yiqing Luo did this action, the jealous man's face immediately lit up with a smile. He held Yiqing Luo's petite body tightly as he stared at her seriously, saying word by word, "You have to look at me. Whatever you want to do, I can help you." Following that, he pulled her hand and placed it on his chest. The rhythmic heartbeat was beating against her palm again and again. His taut muscles were hard yet elastic. This wasn't the first time Yiqing Luo touched his muscles. But every single time Yiqing Luo couldn't help but blush. This is you, this is yours if it's me. The current Zhou Xian's thinking was very simple and extremely stubborn. Yiqing Luo wasn't displeased by the man's overbearingness. On the contrary, her smile grew wider. Old man Song had said this before. Zhou Xian, who was poisoned by the love worm, all his actions were the most direct thoughts in his heart. His overbearingness. His possessiveness. He was filled with love for her. Because of the love worm, it was completely magnified. This was also why old man Song wanted her to be the first person Zhou Xian saw. Otherwise, based on Zhou Xian's character, he really had to depend on Miao Rongrong because of the love worm. She was afraid that Zhou Xian would rather die than listen to the erosion of the love worm. Because right now the person he depended on was Yiqing Luo. That was why Zhou Xian didn't resist at all, allowing the love worm's corrosion. Yiqing Luo smiled till her eyes curved as her face blushed, making her elegant face look extremely adorable. Her face was like a peach blossom and her eyes were like silk. No matter which man it was, there was no way to escape. The charm that Yiqing Luo released. Zhou Xian's eyes locked onto her deeply. That pair of peach blossom eyes were overflowing with colors, resplendent and dazzling. Almost based on instinct, Zhou Xian lowered his head and kissed her smiling lips. Both hands tightened the strength he used to hold her. There was an indescribable feeling clamoring from head to toe. With a clamor, he swallowed the person in his embrace. Yiqing Luo naturally felt the rising temperature from Zhou Xian's body. Her cheeks turned even redder, burning hot. Damn it! As expected of a man, they were all poisoned by love goo. A man's instinct was still there. Ah Xian, alright, the reward has ended, we need to continue chasing after that black line. Yiqing Luo held Zhou Xian's hand and raised her head, interrupting his instincts which were being driven. Ah Xian still had love goo in his body. Being too agitated at this moment was not good for one's health. The man who had been interrupted stopped moving, but he was extremely displeased. His almond-shaped eyes didn't hide his emotions at all. His entire person had sunk into a very low-pressure atmosphere. His shoulders slumped and his face was filled with displeasure, as well as the kind of pitiful look that Yiqing Luo despised. Yiqing Luo felt. The man in front of her now it looked like a canine pet. Moreover, it was a very cute dog-type pet. It made Yiqing Luo's young lady's heart swelled up. She tiptoed and raised her hand as she caressed the man's head. Her voice was gentle as she smiled. All right, Ah Xian, accompany me to do something first, all right? Zhou Xian indeed looked like a dog-type pet. The moment Yiqing Luo's hand landed on his head, the low pressure which was lingering around the man instantly dissipated. Chapter 2656. Such a DMO Xian really made one unable to hold it in. Yiqing Luo looped her arm around his neck as she spoke in a low voice. After we return, I'll give you a reward, all right? His obsidian pupils gazed deeply at her for some time. The man then nodded his noble head. His face was filled with displeasure, but his lips were curled into a smile. Yiqing Luo was all smiles as she rubbed his head. Just as she was about to lock onto the location of the soul-chasing powder, Yiqing Luo suddenly felt a chill down her spine as she raised her head and looked towards a certain spot in the darkness as she suppressed her voice. Who? Her voice had just landed. The arm around her waist tightened. She raised her eyes again and the man's tall and broad back view was in front of her. He stood in front of her, his peerless face was filled with seriousness. I'll protect Lil Luo. Yiqing Luo's fingers held his hand tightly as her 10 fingers intertwined with his. Following that, her gaze stared towards that direction. In the darkness, a figure was indistinctly discernible as it neared from afar. Very quickly, she saw the red-robed man's tall figure completely appearing in front of her eyes. Yiqing Luo's little head popped out from DMO Xian's back, and when she saw the person clearly, her expression congealed. Zhu Xian? Why was he here? Had he followed her here? Then, didn't he have seen DMO Xian's abnormality? Indeed, Zhu Xian's icy cold eyes glanced coldly at DMO Xian before falling onto her face. When he saw that only her little head was exposed, her entire body was completely covered by DMO Xian. That pair of icy cold black eyes seemed to be even colder. What's the matter with him? Zhu Xian's voice was cold and hard, turned silly. It's none of your business. Hearing Zhu Xian's words, Yiqing Luo's heart thumped hard. She instinctively dashed in front of DMO Xian as she opened her arms wide and looked at Zhu Xian vigilantly. Her subconscious action, which made Zhu Xian's eyes dimmed. His complexion was slightly pale. The hands under the red robe were clenched tightly, as though he was restraining something. After a long time, he pursed his lips as his cold eyes continued to look at her. Yiqing Luo, you're mine. Your matters naturally concern me. Bam. A burst of dense, profound energy chopped downwards. The man behind Yiqing Luo revealed a sullen expression as he waved his sleeves and struck out a hurricane. Zhu Xian's eyes turned cold, his figure moving as fast as lightning. That dark force directly smashed onto the ground. The entire mass burial mound shook violently. It could be seen that DMO Xian had used at least 50% of his strength. Seeing that Zhu Xian had dodged the attack, DMO Xian's face turned frosty as he waved his sleeves again, about to strike again. Yiqing Luo immediately pounced forward and hugged his arm. She knew why DMO Xian was angry. At this juncture, she didn't want DMO Xian and Zhu Xian to have a conflict. After all, Zhu Xian now knew about what had happened to DMO Xian. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge storm in the entire Nirvana realm. Those people who were unconvinced with DMO Xian would definitely swarm over, hoping to take the opportunity to kill DMO Xian and replace him. She would never allow such a thing to happen. Zhu Xian, don't think that just because you've saved me a few times, you can continue to think that you're infallible. I, Yiqing Luo, am not anyone's possession, even if I also belong to Xian. Her pink lips pursed slightly as she looked at Zhu Xian with a resolute gaze. I will repay you for saving me, but please don't use this as a reason to disturb my life. Her words paused for a moment. Chapter 2657. In love, there is no room for even a grain of sand. Your persistence towards me has caused me trouble and will make Xian unhappy. It wasn't that she was heartless. Facing this man who had a stubborn persistence towards her. Facing this man who had once shared a beautiful memory with this body. Facing this man who had saved her time and time again. To tell the truth, if they could become friends, she was extremely happy. But Zhu Xian's persistence. She really had no way to repay him. Love was a matter between two people. There was no room for a third person. If she didn't love Zhu Xian, then why should she give him any hope? This was the attitude towards her and Xian's love. The most correct attitude towards Zhu Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes sparkled with a red glow as she met Zhu Xian's eyes tightly as she said word by word. Don't. In the end, we don't even have a chance to talk face to face peacefully. The last 3 words came out from Yiqing Luo's mouth. Zhu Xian's body took a small step backwards. It was a very minute movement and not obvious at all. Don't. Dmo Xian's expression turned chilly as he pulled Yiqing Luo into his arms with a sunken expression. Yiqing Luo knew that the don't he was referring to. Not wanting her and Zhu Xian to talk face-to-face peacefully. Feeling the warmth from the man, Yiqing Luo automatically hugged his waist as her little hand caressed his back, placating the man as she spoke in a warm voice. The opposite sex around me, other than Xian who is my lover, the others can only be brothers or friends. Her words seemed as though she was explaining to Dmo Xian. In actual fact she was saying it for Zhu Xian to hear. Zhu Xian naturally understood what she meant. His expressionless cold face had a sliver of paleness. He was obviously expressionless. But between his brows, there was a chilly intent as well as a vicious air. Her words had infuriated Zhu Xian. Yiqing Luo. Zhu Xian's voice was chilly as the edges of his thin lips were extremely cold. Do you think that if I want you, I will allow you to be arrogant in front of me? Dmo Xian swiftly hugged her even tighter. His peach blossom eyes revealed a solemn vigilance. It seemed to be on guard against Zhu Xian suddenly approaching. Yiqing Luo nestled in Dmo Xian's arms as the expression on her face was very indifferent. Looking at Zhu Xian's tall figure which was emitting a cold aura, she pursed her lips slightly. I don't have any self-righteous thoughts. I just want to tell you that your persistence is useless to me. He has already become a fool, and you are still unwilling to leave him? A few veins appeared on Zhu Xian's forehead. His eyes were very cold and the lines of his facial features were also extremely cold. As he spoke, he narrowed his cold eyes which reflected a cold light. Dmo Xian's possessiveness towards Yiqing Luo. It was like a puppy protecting its food. There was killing intent. However, his aura was too weak. He looked like a fool. I think you're even more foolish. Her eyes were filled with anger. She couldn't stand someone mocking Dmo Xian. Xian did it to protect me, you don't know anything. I can also protect you. Zhu Xian stared into her eyes as if he could not see the anger in her eyes. This man, was he sick in the head? No matter what she said to him, it felt like playing the lute to a cow. I don't need your protection. Yiqing Luo no longer had the patience to continue tangling with him. She retracted her gaze and looked at Dmo Xian. Xian, let's go. Chapter 2658. Zhu Xian, are you trying to threaten me? Yiqing Luo's brows creased as she looked at Zhu Xian with a gloomy expression. Zhu Xian's narrowed eyes were deep and cold. I'm only telling you out of goodwill that this backing of yours has already been destroyed. If you're smart enough, you should think of a way to find a good next. Next. Yiqing Luo murmured these 2 words and suddenly laughed out loud. Her eyes were filled with ridicule. Zhu Xian, your persistence towards me is only because of the warmth I gave you when you were young. She paused, raised her eyes and looked straight at him. There is only unwillingness. Zhu Xian's thin lips were still curled up. His grave and stern face was cold and had a faint trace of loneliness. I have never said that I love you. You are mine, so you should be mine. But I'm not yours. Yiqing Luo calmly interrupted his words. Zhu Xian did not speak. His hands were tightly clenched under his red robe. He couldn't describe what he was feeling right now. He felt as if a nameless flame was surging in his body, wanting to burn everything in its surroundings. Yiqing Luo's words were too ear-piercing. It pierced his eardrums and caused waves of pain. He wanted to seal Yiqing Luo's mouth, so that Yiqing Luo would never be able to say anything that he didn't like to hear. Then she would quietly stay by his side. That was enough. But he couldn't control his emotions. Yiqing Luo was the only lady who could move his heart. Could it be that this was the love that Yiqing Luo mentioned? His feelings for Yiqing Luo were not only moved but love? This thought caused Zhu Xian to be startled. His pupils dilated unconsciously. The expression on his face was a little sluggish. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she looked at Zhu Xian's expression, which looked as though he had seen a ghost, and couldn't be bothered to bother about him. Aren't you afraid that I will really announce Dmo Xian's matter to the public? Seeing Yiqing Luo's back view without any hesitation, Zhu Xian's heart shuddered as he subconsciously opened his mouth. Yiqing Luo didn't turn back, nor did she stop her footsteps. He could only hear her cold voice, which was devoid of warmth. Just go ahead and say it. Even if Zhou Xian becomes the target of everyone, I will stay by his side and fight with him until the last moment. Zhu Xian couldn't say anything else. He stood there in a daze. His gaze was fixated on the direction where Yiqing Luo had disappeared. Yiqing Luo's figure disappeared for quite some time. Only then did Zhou Xian have a slight reaction. He slowly retracted his gaze and the frost in his eyes deepened. His heart was throbbing with pain. The pain made it hard for him to stand still. It clearly belonged to him. It was clearly his. He was just a little late, his things, but for another man denied their commitment. Zhou Xian's lowered eyes suddenly flashed with a sinister light. Yiqing Luo brought along the furious Zhou Xian and quickly left the mass grave. He released his perception and sensed that Zhou Xian hadn't chased after him. She then stopped and hugged Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's face was filled with gloomy clouds. Learning from Yiqing Luo's earlier actions, he cupped her face and directed her gaze towards himself. Until he saw his own reflection in Yiqing Luo's pupils. Only then did his anger subside slightly. Why didn't Lil Luo, or let me kill him? Zhou Xian pinched her face, expressing his unhappiness. Lil Luo, or said a lot of things to him. Chapter 2659. I don't like him. Zhou Xian lowered his head and unhappily rested his head on her neck. The man's warm breath sprayed on her skin. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Trying to calm down his little heart, the small hand gently stroked the back of the man's head. Well, I don't like him either. Lil Luo can only like me, he said gloomily. Yes, only Zhou Xian. Yiqing Luo nodded seriously. Zhou Xian finally revealed a smile. He was disturbed by Zhou Xian. When Yiqing Luo went to search for traces of the soul-chasing powder, he could no longer sense the soul-chasing powder. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled slightly. Usually the reason why he could not sense the soul-chasing powder was, the only thing left was water. The soul-chasing powder was something that could last for more than 3 days upon contact. The only thing that could get rid of the soul-chasing powder was water. The soul-chasing powder melted upon contact with water. However, what worried Yiqing Luo was the soul-chasing powder on the black thread rubbed off because the black thread drilled into the waterway, or was it discovered by the so-called Venerable One? If it was the latter, that mysterious sovereign and Yi would probably notice it too. Their side might also be in danger. Doesn't Lil Luo, or have something to do? Why aren't you leaving? Zhou Xian saw Yiqing Luo's grave expression, and his shimmering peach blossom eyes floated a layer of daze. Not going, let's go back to Qinyue clan first. Yiqing Luo pinched the back of his hand. If it was before Zhou Xian was poisoned by the love worm. This matter. He could ask Zhou Xian for his opinion. When Zhou Xian went to the upper realm, he specially investigated the identities of Yu Ming, Yu Nu, Yu Ji and the others, as well as the identity of the revered ones behind them. However, for the past few days they had been showing off their affection. They had never discussed such a serious topic before. Now I want to discuss it. Zhou Xian reckoned that he didn't know anything about it. It was better to return to Joy Sect and ask Miao Yi how to get rid of the love goo. Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian had just stepped into their courtyard. She saw that Yan Xiaoyi and the rest had already set up their chairs and picked up their melon seeds, waiting for her to come back and gossip. Even the cold and aloof ghost martial artist was sitting in the corner. Facing so many pairs of interested eyes, Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes and asked directly, "Where's Yi and Xian Gui?" As soon as they returned, they locked themselves in their rooms. Yan Xiaoyi glanced in the direction of Miao Yi's room, lowered her voice and asked curiously, "What exactly happened over at the Miao tribe? From what they're saying, it seems like they're suffering the consequences of their own actions after scheming against you." Just like what they said. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards. At this moment, it was not only Yan Xiaoyi who stood up. Even Qiao Jin and Peach couldn't help but stand up. They looked at each other in dismay. After some time, Yan Xiaoyi swallowed a mouthful of saliva and raised her thumb. "Qing Luo, beautifully done. Covered with goo worms. I really don't know how you came up with this idea, your taste is just too heavy." Qiao Jin trembled as he rubbed his arms. The both of them are father and daughter. The idea was thought of by themselves. I'm merely giving them a taste of their own medicine. Yiqing Luo gave an innocent and kind smile. Moreover, Father and daughter, that might not necessarily be the case. Chapter 2660. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and blocked Peach's action. I'm not too sure, but you should know Miao Yi's identity, right? Peach rubbed her nose. You already know? Yan Xiaoyi recalled that quiet girl. You mean Miao Yi? She paused and muttered softly, Miao Yi Miao Rong Rong. It can't be. Yan Xiaoyi looked at the both of them, seeking for an answer. She saw the both of them nodding their heads. Yan Xiaoyi opened her mouth wide in astonishment. She had not expected this. That quiet girl who seemed to blend into the air was actually someone from the Miao tribe. Moreover, she was Miao Yixiong's daughter. It was no wonder that Miao Yi locked herself in her room after returning from the Miao tribe courtyard. That's right, they were saying that both of Miao Rongrong's hands were crippled. One side looked like it was cut off by a knife, while the other looked like it was bitten off by a magical beast. Qiao Jin winked at Yiqing Luo. Don't tell me this was done by you. Yiqing Luo decisively betrayed her teammates, expressing that she wasn't that bloodthirsty. Qiao Jin pointed to Miao Yi's room. Earlier I saw your Chi-Chi and followed her to Miao Yi's room. Speaking of which, ever since Miao Yi appeared, her Chi-Chi had disappeared and didn't return to the pet space. She could sense that Chi-Chi was in a safe state. She thought that Chi-Chi had bitten a disgusting human's arm and ran off to relax. She had not expected it to follow Miao Yi back. I'll go take a look at Yi's room. Yiqing Luo pulled Zhou Xian and was about to head over. Suddenly a tender voice rang out, Elder sister. Kitty Li, who had finally struggled free from Zomo's embrace, pounced towards Yiqing Luo's arms. Kitty's ears drooped down. Her tone was filled with grievance. Sister, why ever since that frivolous man came, you don't bring me along for anything? Saying that, she stared at Zomo's direction with her watery eyes. She just stared. That white-robed young man who was originally smiling evilly, suddenly froze as his expression sunk. Little wild cat, be careful. What? Kitty Li was still in a daze, not understanding Zomo's meaning. The next moment, Kitty Li's black cat ears twitched as her strong sense of danger made her swiftly retreated backwards before she had even pounced into Yiqing Luo's arms. However, no matter how fast Kitty Li was, but the remnant power of the profound energy that attacked her still swept across Kitty Li. Kitty Li's petite body suddenly flew backwards. Kitty. Yiqing Luo didn't expect that the man beside her would suddenly make a move. Kitty Li was about to fall to the ground. Yiqing Luo's gaze turned cold as she immediately pulled Zhou Xian's arm away from her waist and was about to rush over to catch Kitty Li. A white figure was even faster than her. Kitty Li's body softly fell into Zomo's arms. Ugh. Kitty Li's face was slightly pale. Just the aftershock alone had already caused her to suffer some minor internal injuries. If it wasn't for the feline beast's instincts that allowed him to dodge first, he was afraid that he would lose his life there. Zhou looked at the pale expression of the girl in his arms. His usual devilish phoenix eyes were filled with a gloomy and cold intent. He clenched his fists tightly as he looked at Zhou Xian with a gloomy and raspy voice. Overlord, what do you mean by this? It wasn't hard to tell. He was filled with rage. Yiqing Luo was about to head over to check on Kitty Li's condition, but her wrist was held tightly by Zhou Xian. Chapter 2661. Zhou Xian's hand tightened as his expression turned gloomy and his eyes were deep and cold. Not aloud. He spat out 2 words coldly. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes. Ah Xian, I'm angry. Her gaze was very calm. Her tone was very calm. On her face there was no expression at all. Zhou Xian held her hand as it trembled slightly. His deep and cold aura dropped and instead added grievance. You can only be hugged by me. He's my sister. Yiqing Luo flung his hand away. This time, Zhou Xian didn't dare to hold her tightly. After Yiqing Luo struggled free, she immediately walked towards Kitty Li. She sensed that the man behind her was walking towards Kitty Li. He also lifted his feet trying to chase up to her. But he immediately stopped in his tracks. Yiqing Luo didn't turn back. She knew that Zhou Xian was poisoned by the love goo, which was why he was like this. But she wasn't going to leave him hanging. In future he would still make a move on her brothers because of this. Ordinary people would not be able to withstand his attack. She must let Zhou Xian know the seriousness of this matter. Walking towards Kitty Li, Yiqing Luo fed her a medicinal pill to treat her internal injuries. Kitty Li nestled in Zomo's arms. Her petite body was like an obedient kitten. She sneaked a glance at Zhou Xian, who was behind Yiqing Luo. Her pale face didn't blame him but was puzzled. "Sister, what's wrong with Overlord brother-in-law?" Everyone present could tell that something was wrong with Zhou Xian. Yiqing Luo caressed Kitty Li's face as she gave a warm smile. "Kitty Li, don't be afraid, there won't be a next time." Her hand had just landed on Kitty Li's face. The surrounding air had obviously turned cold. Everyone looked towards Yiqing Luo's back in unison, and after that, they all started to shiver. Yiqing Luo straightened her body slightly and glanced sideways at Zhou Xian. That icy cold man who was overflowing with viciousness, as though he was going to destroy the heaven and earth at the next moment. Just because she had glanced at him. Instantly, he lowered his head as his anger was completely restrained. Seeing this, Zhou, who had been livid, could not continue to be angry. "What's wrong with Dizun? In order to save me, you blocked Miao Yixiong's forbidden gu technique." Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past everyone present as her pink lips spat out the words, "Love gu." Everyone was stunned. Didn't those people say that you and Dizun are fine? How could the Overlord? No matter how strong Xian is, he's still human. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyelids. "His current situation is a little special, don't be angry." Zhou frowned as his gaze swept past Zhou Xian. "You're looking for Miao Yi just to ask about the cure for the love worm?" "Yes." Yiqing Luo took a look at Kitty Li in his arms. "Bring Kitty Li to rest for a while. When she wakes up, she'll be fine." Zhou tightened his grip, took a look at Kitty Li and then at Zhou Xian. That pair of long and narrow red phoenix eyes slightly narrowed. "Seeing that he is injured, I will not argue with him about hurting the little wild cat." Saying that, he carried Kitty Li and took quick steps towards his own room. Everyone finally digested this news as they sized up Zhou Xian while asking carefully, "Qing Luo, that Dizun is now full of possessiveness towards you? He can't see. Other than me, if you get close to me you will be treated as an outsider." Yiqing Luo turned around and looked at the man who had been standing silently behind her. Chapter 2662. Zhou Xian drooped his head as his eyes dimmed. The glow which he brought along seemed to have disappeared at this moment. That peerless face was filled with grievance. This made Yiqing Luo think. A dog pet which was abandoned by its owner. But although the man was feeling aggrieved, but his eyes were still staring at her without blinking. Extreme focus. Looking at her was like looking at the entire world. It was filled with attachment towards her. No matter how she looked at him, he looked a little pitiful. Yiqing Luo's heart instantly softened. Cough, cough, cough. Why do I feel that? After the Overlord was inflicted with the love gu, he became even more oppressive. Peach's face was filled with abuse as he said that as he turned his head to one side. Originally we were already used to being oppressed. Now we're going to be stuffed again. Yan Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin said expressionlessly as they shifted their gazes away at the same time. Yiqing Luo ignored their teasing. She suppressed the softness in her heart, suppressing the urge to go over and rub Zhou Xian's black hair, to let his eyes regain its luster. After that she continued to look at him coldly. "Come over." Zhou Xian blinked as his eyes glowed slightly. As though he was surprised that his Lil Luo was calling him. "Come over." Yiqing Luo repeated. The brilliance in Zhou Xian's eyes turned even brighter. He obediently walked towards Yiqing Luo. When he reached Yiqing Luo, he stretched out his arms to hug her. "Stop." Yiqing Luo raised her hand to stop his actions. Zhou Xian's expression collapsed as he pursed his lips in grievance as he drooped his head. The more she looked, the more he looked like a dog pet. Yiqing Luo continued to put on a cold face. "Do you know your mistake?" Zhou Xian stared at her face as his voice was filled with grievance. "You can only be hugged by me, I don't like it." A man's voice was magnetic and pleasant to listen to. Mellow and mellow like fine wine. At this moment, coupled with this grievance, it sounded like a dog pet trying to act cute and coquettish. As someone who was attracted to voices, she simply couldn't hold it in. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath to calm herself down as she continued to reason with him. "The people here are all my friends, my brothers. If you hurt them, I will be very sad, very upset." Pausing for a moment, she pursed her pink lips and said, "Does Xian want to see me sad and sad?" Zhou Xian panicked and immediately shook his head. I don't want to. Then in order not to make me sad, not to make me upset, you must promise me that you are not to make a move on these people whom I care about. Yiqing Luo took the opportunity to hold Dmo Xian's hand. His hand was cold. He probably wanted to get closer to her. He was also afraid that she would really get angry. He had been perturbed, restless and nervous. As a result, his hand was so cold. Yiqing Luo's hands wrapped around his hands. Her small hands couldn't close his big palms at all. But such an action made Dmo Xian's face reveal a smile. A very pure and clean smile. "Ah Xian, you haven't answered my question." Yiqing Luo rubbed his hand, using her own warmth to warm him up. When the question was raised, Dmo Xian's smile froze. He raised his eyes and swiftly swept a glance at the few people seated around them. On discovering that there were a few men, his expression turned even uglier. He was just about to shake his head. But he met with Yiqing Luo's slightly narrowed eyes. "Lil Luo, Dmo Xian suppressed his voice as he felt aggrieved. Yiqing Luo knew that after he was poisoned by the love goo, he was still unable to control himself and let others get close to her. But she had to correct this bad habit of Dmo Xian. Chapter 2663. Recalling the scene earlier when Dmo Xian made a move on Kitty Li, Yiqing Luo hardened her heart and tried to struggle free from his hand. He was just putting on an act. Dmo Xian couldn't bear to let go of her. So after a few struggles, Yiqing Luo was hugged tightly in Dmo Xian's arms. Although he was a man who was poisoned by the love goo, but he was extremely sensitive towards matters regarding Yiqing Luo. He knew that if he really let Lil Luo, struggle free, Lil Luo, would be even angrier. He couldn't bear to make Lil Luo, angry. But she didn't want Lil Luo, to be snatched away. Lil Luo was his. This thought made Dmo Xian's heart twitch violently. His tall and sturdy body also trembled for a moment. "What's the matter?" Yiqing Luo nestled in his arms and could clearly feel his body's reaction as she immediately raised her head and asked worriedly. Dmo Xian still had that aggrieved expression. The gaze in his peach blossom eyes was exactly the same as a dog-type pet. He shook his head as though the reaction in his heart earlier was just an illusion. His eyes were fixated on her as he spoke with grievance. "I don't want Lil Luo, to be sad, upset." That look really made Yiqing Luo unable to control herself. Her eyes softened as she stretched out her hand and rubbed his head gently. "I can't bear to make Ah Xian angry, so I will try my best to avoid having too much contact with them. But Ah Xian must promise me that he will not make a move without my permission." Dmo Xian lowered his body so that her hand could easily rub his head. This action once again made Yiqing Luo turn cute. Her Ah Xian. He was really becoming more and more like a dog-type pet. Was he planning to develop towards the direction of a loyal dog? Just as Yiqing Luo's young lady's heart was overflowing, a man's low and hoarse grievance voice was heard. "I won't make a move, Lil Luo, don't be angry with me." That grievance made Yiqing Luo's eyes filled with a smile. She held Dmo Xian's face and pinched his face, not angry but, "Earlier you hurt my sister. My sister is also your sister, so I must punish you." "Sister." Dmo Xian muttered these two words in a low voice, as if he did not understand the profound meaning behind it. Following that, he raised his head again as his eyes filled with deep emotions congealed on Yiqing Luo. "I don't want a sister, I only want Lil Luo, Silly. Yiqing Luo was overjoyed. This man, after being poisoned by the love goo, he kept saying sweet nothings one after another. However, no matter how alluring her beauty was, the punishment that should be given must be given. Only in this way would Dmo Xian have a good memory. And, most importantly, it was not convenient for her to let Dmo Xian follow. As a result, everyone's faces were filled with shock, their eyes were blinded by the light, and their mouths were agape with shock. Yiqing Luo held Dmo Xian's hand as they walked towards the direction of Miao Yi's room. He stood in front of Miao Yi's room. Yiqing Luo pushed Dmo Xian to a position. "Stand here, wait for me to come out." "No." Dmo Xian's eyes widened as he quickly diffused the mist. But before he could finish his words, Yiqing Luo had already interrupted his rejection. "I'm in the room. Stay here and you can sense my presence. Don't move, don't go in." Dmo Xian felt even more wronged. Chapter 2664. In the end, Dmo Xian felt wronged as he watched Yiqing Luo walk into Miao Yi's room. He was like a large-scale dog pet. He stood obediently at the spot where Yiqing Luo had set, not moving an inch. His eyes also stared unblinkingly at the tightly shut door. He was extremely focused, as though he had already seen the person he wanted to see through the door. Yiqing Luo pushed the door open and just closed it. A furry little thing pounced on her. "Master." A child's crisp voice was filled with joy. Yiqing Luo rubbed Chi-Chi's little head. "Why did you sneak back with not waiting for me?" Chi-Chi shook its little head and its tail kept swaying. "Master, do you know who Chi-Chi discovered?" Chi-Chi was rarely so excited. She remembered the last time she was this excited was when she met Raging Flame. Qing Luo. Miao Yi's hoarse voice was heard from the bed under the veil. Apparently she had just cried. Yiqing Luo stroked Chi-Chi, indicating that whatever it was they could talk about it later. Following that she put Chi-Chi down and slowly walked towards the bed. "Are you very sad?" Under the veil Miao Yi's figure looked extremely slender. Miao Yi sobbed slightly and said in a hoarse voice, "Not sad, just. I can't understand why they want to treat me like this." "Can you lift the veil?" Yiqing Luo's knees pressed against the side of the bed. Miao Yi was stunned for a moment, her little body shrunk and said, "Just don't laugh at me." Yiqing Luo lifted the veil and hung it on both sides of the bed. Miao Yi curled up at the foot of the bed, leaning against the wall and hugging her knees. Her pair of eyes were all red. Her eyelashes were stained with a patch of moisture. The little girl looked especially fragile at this moment. She was after all just a young lady in her teens. Being treated like this by her own father and sister. How could she walk out so easily? Qing Luo. Miao Yi raised her head and looked at her with red eyes. "I am obviously the direct bloodline of the Miao tribe. My venom is obviously not any worse than Miao Rongrong. Why did he never put me in his eyes?" Miao Yi couldn't understand. Her so-called father had plotted and schemed to kill her. He wanted her to give up her seat to Miao Rongrong. Her so-called elder sister had treated her as an enemy from the very beginning. For the sake of kinship she had given everything to Miao Rongrong. But in the end, the result was that the father and daughter had conspired to kill her. Today he saw Miao Yixiong get the D-Zune from Miao Rongrong. Miao Yixiong didn't hesitate to use the ancestors' forbidden technique to deal with Yiqing Luo. Moreover, when she appeared in front of him after escaping from death, what she got was not her father's concern. It was Miao Yixiong who was filled with rage. He should have given up hope long ago. However, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Yiqing Luo opened her arms wide as she smiled warmly. "Since they don't want you, then love yourself well and bring out your best self, to make him regret that he didn't choose you back then." Miao Yi looked at Yiqing Luo for some time. He threw himself into her arms. The little person seemed to have finally found someone to rely on. Her tears quickly dyed Yiqing Luo's clothes. Yiqing Luo comforted her gently. "From today onwards, no matter if it's Miao Yixiong or Miao Rongrong, their existence represents a joke. Now it's time for you to prop up the Miaogu family." Chapter 2665. "You think I'm joking?" Yiqing Luo tapped her forehead. "Where's the lofty aspiration from before? Where's the self-confidence that you can do better than them?" Miao Yi's little hands curled up nervously. I haven't received any special training, I'm afraid As long as you have the heart for the Miaogu family, you can do anything well." Yiqing Luo was like a big sister as she comforted her gently. "I've spared their lives, don't tell me. Don't you want them to regret how they treated you?" Miao Yi's eyes lit up slightly. "The ancient Gu worm is willing to form a contract with you, that proves your ability. Don't the Miaogu family's sacred lady mainly choose the ancient Gu worm?" Yiqing Luo slowly shifted Miao Yi's body away. She lowered her head as her charming eyes looked at Miao Yi. "Think about Grandpa Bu and Grandma Bu who died and those people in the Bu family village, don't tell me. You don't want to protect them?" Miao Yi's body suddenly stiffened. Her beautiful eyes flickered. "1 month later I'll hand Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong over to you. You just have to think of what to do." Yiqing Luo smiled lightly, not forcing her to make a choice now. In Miao Yixiong's courtyard. Miao Yi's hot-blooded confidence. It was all triggered by Miao Yixiong's cruelty and the disappointment towards him. "Now I need your help on one more matter." Yiqing Luo looked at the direction of the tightly shut room door. Thinking of that man like a loyal dog standing obediently at the door, she couldn't help but smile. Miao Yi looked over in puzzlement. Other than the tightly shut room door, there was nothing else. You want me to accompany you to the West Continent, to help your friend suppress the goo poison? Miao Yi retracted her gaze as she asked. This matter, let's talk about it 1 month later. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. It's Xian, he's affected by the love goo and he's not normal now. And he's also poisoned by the centrifugal goo. I'm worried something will happen. Overlord isn't unaffected by the goo poison, how could he? Miao Yi was stunned. Yi Qing Luo's expression sunk slightly. His identity is special. This matter cannot be known to others. Miao Yi's expression turned serious as well. The venerable Dizun was poisoned by the love curse and the centrifugal curse. Is he only affected by the love curse? Yi Qing Luo nodded as she narrated Dmo Xian's current situation in a concise and comprehensive manner. Miao Yi's expression became more and more solemn. Maybe the Dizun's body is different from ordinary people and the goo worms affect him, but he can still retain some of his consciousness. After a pause, she frowned. If the love goo affects Sir Dizun, then the centrifugal goo will definitely do the same. This is going to be troublesome. Do you have any ideas? Since it's the ancestors' forbidden venomous spell, your Miao tribe's ancestor side would definitely have a way to counter it, right? Yi Qing Luo's heart jolted as she asked anxiously. Miao Yi muttered to herself for a moment as she raised her eyes and met Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes seriously. Qing Luo, I will take part in the Sacred Maiden selection 1 month later, to become the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. As long as I become the Sacred Maiden, I will be able to enter the Sacred Maiden Pavilion. Over there are all the Miao tribe's venomous spells for the past few hundred years. I will definitely find a way to counter the venomous spell for the Overlord. If it was before, she still had some resistance towards the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. Then now. For Yi Qing Luo, for the Overlord. She must become the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. Chapter 2666. Miao Yi lowered her head dejectedly. Only the Saintess Pavilion can find a way to cure the goo. I don't know any other way. Different situations call for different measures. As long as there's a way, we'll just wait. Yi Qing Luo patted Miao Yi's shoulder lightly. Xian is waiting for me at the entrance. If he continues to stay, he might not be able to hold it in. I'll go out and accompany him first. Miao Yi immediately slid off the bed. Yi Qing Luo walked to the door and suddenly turned her head around, smiling at her. Now you have the motivation to struggle for me. You must work hard to become the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. Yi Qing Luo said the last yo, in a very mischievous manner. Miao Yi's originally grave expression immediately broke into a smile. Yes. I will work hard. Yi Qing Luo pushed open the room door and was thinking about how to appease her Xian. However, when his gaze fell on the door of the room, she was stunned. Where was that tall figure that she had made Dmo Xian stand at? Xian. Yi Qing Luo immediately opened her mouth and walked out of the courtyard in quick steps. Wasn't the current Dmo Xian very attached to her? Why did he obediently wait for her at the door again? Did something happen to Xian? This thought made Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped hard. The speed of his feet had also increased. When he rushed to the courtyard, Yan Xiaoyi and the rest were still sitting there. All of them had an indescribably strange expression on their faces. Yi Qing Luo didn't think too much about it as her gaze fell onto the familiar figure standing beside Gui Wu. His heart, which was hanging in the air, was finally at ease. Fortunately, he was fine. Xian, why didn't you wait for me? She smiled and flew towards Dmo Xian, opening her arms and circling around his waist. Qing Luo, wait. Someone wanted to say something. Yi Qing Luo had yet to feel the man's warmth. Her shoulders were suddenly pressed down by someone. Then with a strong tug she was pulled away. Xian. Yi Qing Luo hissed. The force on her shoulder was so strong that her face turned pale from the pain. Impudent. A cold voice floated down from above. The man's cold and indifferent gaze swept past Yi Qing Luo coldly. Who are you? How dare you call this lord's name directly? Yi Qing Luo's body suddenly stiffened. She suddenly raised her head, her charming eyes staring at the man in front of her. It was still the same peerless face. He still had that godlike temperament. But his aura and everything about him were different. Especially that pair of peach blossom eyes that were usually filled with tenderness and affection when he looked at her. At this moment, it was extremely cruel and evil. His peach blossom eyes were still glittering to the point of being extremely bewitching. His expression was as cold as ice. From head to toe, he exuded the noble and powerful aura that only belonged to him, the venerable emperor. When he looked at her, his eyes were filled with unfamiliarity. Yiqing Luo's heart twitched violently. What's going on? She looked at Gui Wu, her heart aching. Such a gaze. She couldn't stand it. Centrifugal goo. Gui Wu lightly spat out these 3 words. Centrifugal force goo. Is the venom of centrifugal force acting up? This is the centrifugal goo? Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. Looking at Xianmo Xian's face, her face flushed red. She pursed her pink lips, her voice was slightly hoarse. So he doesn't remember me, right? Venerable Overlord loves you so much. He will definitely remember. Yan Xiaoyi, who was standing by the side, opened her mouth carefully. Chapter 2667. Don't remember? The icy cold voice was emotionless. Xianmo Xian lowered his eyes as he looked at the elegant young lady in front of him as his lips curled into a cold intent. Woman, do you think this will attract the attention of this lord? He grabbed her shoulder tightly and was about to throw her out. This lord hates women like you the most. Overlord. The surrounding people were shocked by Xianmo Xian's action as they broke out in cold sweat. Yan Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin couldn't be bothered about the cold and overbearing overlord in front of them. They directly pounced towards Yiqing Luo's direction, afraid that Xianmo Xian would really throw Yiqing Luo out. But just as Xianmo Xian was about to throw the woman who didn't know what's good for her, Xianmo Xian's body suddenly froze. His eyes stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. His brows creased slightly. Why? He actually couldn't bear to do it? His heart felt as though it was pricked by a needle. Overlord, you. Don't be rash, don't be rash. Xianmo Xian's daze allowed Yan Xiaoyi to successfully pull Yiqing Luo out from his hands. Yan Xiaoyi blocked Yiqing Luo behind her as she gave a flattering smile. Xianmo Xian didn't even look at Yan Xiaoyi. Instead, he went past Yan Xiaoyi and shot straight towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't move. She stood behind Yan Xiaoyi in a daze. Her charming eyes looked at Xianmo Xian's obviously familiar but at the same time emitted an unfamiliar aura. Zhou Xian. Just half an hour ago he was still filled with tender feelings towards her. But now, he had become so cold. Zhou Xian. Her voice was a little hoarse as she looked at Xianmo Xian's emotionless eyes. Qing Luo, don't open your mouth. He has forgotten about you now, perhaps he might really make a move on you. Xiao Jin pulled her along as he quickly walked behind Gui Wu. With Gui Wu around, Xianmo Xian would at least give Gui Wu some face. He glanced sideways at the deathly still Yiqing Luo and immediately looked towards Xianmo Xian. He's been poisoned by the love worm. You've seen for yourself how he treats the cat. He himself can't control himself. He won't make a move on me. Even until now, Yiqing Luo still firmly believed in Xianmo Xian. Earlier, Xianmo Xian was obviously going to throw her out. But in the end he stopped. Even though he was affected by the centrifugal goo. Even if he forgot everything about her. But in the end he still loved her. Did you ask about the method to cure the goo? Gui Wu raised his head and asked in a light voice. 1 month later, St. Maiden Pavilion. Yiqing Luo stared at the direction of Xianmo Xian and replied. 1 month. Gui Wu muttered before suddenly snorting. Can you tolerate him treating you like this? 1 month? No. Yiqing Luo replied decisively as she clenched her fists tightly. I will not let him be like this forever. She would rather Xianmo Xian be like the previous dog-type pet, with a strong possessive desire towards her. She also didn't wish for Xianmo Xian's eyes to lose her existence. Yan Xiaoyi, move aside. On seeing Yiqing Luo's pair of dimmed eyes, Xianmo Xian felt an indescribable frustration in his heart. He did not like this feeling at all. He did not like the feeling of his emotions being affected by a stranger. Who is she? Why did it make him feel so strongly? He must find out about this woman's origins. Xianmo Xian pushed Yan Xiaoyi aside as he walked towards Yiqing Luo in big strides. Xiaoyi. The moment Xiao Jin saw Yan Xiaoyi being pushed to the side, he immediately rushed forward and supported Yan Xiaoyi. Chapter 2668. Icy cold gaze. No warmth in his tone. Yiqing Luo's heart was throbbing in pain. His 5 fingers, which were hanging by his side, gradually curled up. She looked straight into Xianmo Xian's eyes. Her charming eyes were filled with emotions. Xian frowned even tighter when he saw this. He quickened his pace and walked towards Yiqing Luo. The surrounding people looked at each other in dismay. But they saw Gui Wu, who had been sitting, suddenly stood up. Gui Wu, who had been sitting, suddenly stood up. Gui Wu stood up at the right time. Coincidentally, he blocked in front of Xian. His body completely shielded Yiqing Luo behind his back. Gui Wu's expression was still calm. Overlord, I advise you to restrain your emotions, lest you do something that you will regret. Xian's footsteps paused slightly. His peach blossom eyes squinted slightly, flickering with a gloomy luster. Why? Even Master Gui Wu and this group of people think that I have lost my memory? His voice was very low, revealing a trace of hoarseness as if he was fooling around. I don't know, when did Master Gui Wu become so worldly, trying to shove a woman beside me? Gui Wu's face was still calm as he looked into Xian's eyes. If you think so, then so be it. Xian pursed his thin lips. He naturally knew Gui Wu's character. He also understood that Gui Wu would not speak up for a woman without any reason. This woman. What was her identity? Why did it seem that everyone in this courtyard was very familiar with her? Moreover, the way she looked at him. It always made him feel like being pricked by a needle. Get out of my way. Xian's eyes sunk. Gui Wu's expressionless face changed slightly. He frowned and was about to open his mouth. Behind him, a young lady's tranquil voice came. Master Gui Wu, don't worry, I believe no matter what he turns into, he will never hurt me. As the young lady spoke, she slowly walked out from behind Gui Wu. She approached Xian. Extremely close. Almost with both feet touching his toes. The young lady slightly raised her head as long as she tiptoed, as long as he lowered his head. Their lips were so close that they could touch each other. Their breaths entwined with each other. Xian frowned deeply, not used to being so close to others. He wanted to move his feet back. But when he smelled the fragrance on the woman's body, his body was stiff, unable to move. There was an indescribable feeling of irritation in his heart. The fragrance of the young girl lingered in his nostrils. The more he thought about it, the more strange emotions surged in his heart. Suddenly his body trembled. His heart ached as if it had been bitten by something. Xian, how did you? Yiqing Luo noticed that Xian was in a daze for a moment. Her pupils constricted as she raised her hand to cover his face. Pa. Xian slapped her arm away. A pair of flickering purple eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. Get lost. Don't touch me. His body was trembling incessantly. It was as if he was suppressing some kind of pain. Yiqing Luo held onto her arm, which was already swollen from the slap, as she took a few steps back. The way Xian looked at her. It was filled with killing intent. Yes. It was the kind of killing intent that wanted to kill her. Yiqing Luo's breathing tightened as her face turned pale. Qing Luo. The few people beside her, when they saw this scene, all had their hearts in their mouths. Miao Yi heard the commotion outside and dashed out. On seeing Xian's abnormality, and Yiqing Luo's painful and unbelievable look. Chapter 2669. Yiqing Luo was pushed aside by Miao Yi. Miao Yi panted heavily as she held onto Yiqing Luo's arm and pulled her to one side. Overlord is affected by the centrifugal force Gu. The centrifugal force Gu will cause the Overlord to be estranged from you, hate you, or even more want to kill you. Until they were 10 steps away from Xian. Miao Yi then stopped in her tracks as she looked at Xian vigilantly and continued. The closer you get to him, his heart and body's love and instinct towards you will activate the centrifugal force Gu, making him want to kill you even more. Yiqing Luo looked at Xian in a daze. Her mind was filled with Miao Yi's sentence. Want to kill you. He would kill her. He really would kill her? Ancestors' forbidden Gu art has been passed down till today. If the Overlord were to forcefully fight with the Gu worm because of you, it would cause a huge damage to his body. Miao Yi saw Yiqing Luo's absent-minded look and immediately straightened her head as she said solemnly, Qing Luo, don't agitate the Overlord first. When I become the sacred maiden, I will think of ways to cure the Overlord. Yiqing Luo's fingers tightened once again. She slowly closed her eyes as though she had used all the energy in her body to suppress the pain in her heart. After some time she spoke out hoarsely, all right. For Xian's body. In order not to agitate Xian. It was just a month's time. At most, in order to avoid Zhou Xian and use that cold gaze to look at her. She would go and cultivate for a month. Using cultivation to numb herself. Using cultivation to forget Zhou Xian for a month. Don't forget the Overlord still has the love goo in his body. Miao Yi unceremoniously cut off Yiqing Luo's plan. You are the object of his attachment, you must not be more than 100 miles away from him, otherwise the love goo in his body will be agitated. F***K. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but cursed. She clenched her fists angrily. What you mean is, not only do I have to endure his supercilious looks and his cold indifference, I also have to follow him all the time? Miao Yi was shocked by Yiqing Luo's valiant voice. You have Master Gui Wu to protect you, the Overlord will not specially make a move on you. Yiqing Luo's expression was gloomy as her charming eyes stared fixedly at Zhou Xian's direction. She looked into that pair of indifferent and disgusted eyes. Yiqing Luo's hands were already clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. All right, I'll follow him. Yiqing Luo stared at that peerless face as she gritted her teeth and said that. She had already thought about it in her heart, after Zhou Xian was cured of the goo, how she would seek revenge for all the grievances she had suffered in this 1 month. Zhou Xian, who was standing in front of Gui Wu, saw that Yiqing Luo and Miao Yi were still chatting about something, as his expression turned increasingly gloomy. The lines on his cold face were cold and hard. His gloomy eyes swept over the two women. His gaze finally fell onto Yiqing Luo. I'll say it one last time. You come here. He raised his hand and pointed at Yiqing Luo. This group of people really believed that Gui Wu was here. Did that mean he didn't dare to touch them? One by one, both of them were challenging his authority? Zhou Xian's inky eyes surged with a dark and gloomy storm, like a whirlpool, one after another. Yiqing Luo clenched her fingers tightly. Miao Yi shook her head at her. But Zhou Xian's words were irresistible. She had already forgotten about her Zhou Xian. Chapter 2670. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she remembered what Miao Yi said earlier. She took a deep breath and walked towards Zhou Xian. Suddenly there was a hubbub from outside the courtyard. Following that, she saw 20 to 30 forces who were staying at Qinyu sect, about 50 over people, walking in from outside the courtyard. Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted as she frowned slightly, staring at the bunch of people who had fake smiles on their faces. In her mind, words suddenly appeared. They came with ill intentions. This group of people indeed did not come with good intentions. Moreover, their target was clear and direct. After their gazes swept past Yiqing Luo, they all turned to look at Zhou Xian. One of the powerhouses in the Northern Waves continent, Qing family's patriarch, smiled as he bowed to Zhou Xian, Overlord. Following that, he cupped his fists towards Gui Wu, Master Gui Wu. The other 10 over people did the same. Gui Wu frowned as he stood up impatiently and left directly. He didn't give any face to these powerhouses' representatives. No one was annoyed. They were long used to Gui Wu's character. Anyway, their target wasn't Gui Wu. Overlord, I heard that you went to the Miao tribe leader's courtyard and almost fell into his trap. Fortunately, Overlord's strength is extraordinary and you saw through the Miao tribe leader's tricks. Instead, the Miao tribe leader was devoured by his goo insect. Finishing his words, Qing family's patriarch carefully looked at Zhou Xian's expression as he plucked up his courage and asked, Overlord shouldn't have fallen into the Miao clan leader's trap, right? This question made Yiqing Luo's heart thumped fiercely. These people were probably here to test if Zhou Xian had been poisoned by the Miao clan's goo worm. Chu Wu Exen had really spread the news of Zhou Xian being poisoned by the love goo worm? Otherwise, why would these people have the guts to test him? She immediately raised her eyes and looked at Zhou Xian. Now Zhou Xian had lost all his memories regarding her. Then, regarding Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's matters. Did he still remember? These people when they asked. If Zhou Xian's answer was slightly wrong, it would make this group of astute monkey-like representatives to detect some clues. Yiqing Luo wanted to interrupt. However, he was interrupted by a cold voice. I'm fine. The cold words were filled with majesty. There was something called an aura spreading out in the surroundings. For no reason, more than 50 people felt a chill run down their spines. The Qing family's patriarch swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The immense pressure was so great that he couldn't even stand steadily. However, he recalled the words that person had whispered in his ear. If he didn't follow that person's arrangements and push forward this drama, he absolutely wouldn't be able to live. At this moment, no matter how scared the Qing family patriarch was, he had to summon up his courage and continue to ask, "Overlord, it's better to let the elders of the Miao tribe examine you. You are a noble person. Something happens to you in the northern continent and this news spreads out. How will the people of the northern continent behave?" An ice-cold gaze instantly fell on the head of the Qing family. The head of the Qing clan shuddered and his legs almost turned to jelly. We are just concerned about your health." Zhou Xian suddenly laughed. His thin, rosy lips curled into a cold, murderous arc. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes looked even more devilish at this moment. But it made one's heart turn cold. Laughing so hard that the Qing family patriarch couldn't withstand this pressure. With a plop, he knelt down. Chapter 2671. Zhou Xian, Qing family's patriarch, and the rest turned pale and broke out in cold sweat. "How dare a puny Miao Yixiong scheme against me?" Zhou Xian raised his eyebrows with a faint smile. "Do you think that I haven't appeared in Nirvana realm for a long time and you can overturn the heavens?" All the representatives had no more confidence at this moment. Qing family's patriarch was so scared that he almost cried out, "Zhou Xian, I'm stupid. I didn't mean it, I was just worried about Zhou Xian. I shouldn't have speculated about Zhou Xian's body. I know I'm wrong." Zhou Xian curled his devilish eyes and sneered, "I'm not interested to know whether it was intentional or not, but you made me feel very unhappy." The last 5 words. He spat them out almost word by word. It was like a voice from hell demanding for their lives. The representatives of the various superpowers were so shocked that they found it difficult to even breathe. Thump, thump. Instantly all the people kneeled on the ground. Zhou Xian was indeed unhappy. From head to toe it was obvious that he was unhappy. He still wanted to catch that woman who made his emotions restless. If that woman could really affect his emotions, then he would kill her directly to get rid of any future troubles. This group of people actually came to disturb him. Zhou Xian's eyes suddenly turned fierce and he swept his sleeves. Immediately, a powerful and majestic profound qi turned into a hurricane, and in a split second, it had directly struck Qing family's patriarch. Qing family's patriarch let out a scream and flew out. The terrifying profound qi brought along a bone-piercing chill. The aftershock overturned the surrounding people who were kneeling down. Those people were scared out of their wits and knelt on the ground, kowtowing fiercely. Zhou Xian's palm was powerful, but it didn't directly take Qing family's patriarch's life. Just that, Qing family's patriarch, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. Qing family's patriarch spat out a mouthful of blood. His internal organs were churning with a fishy sweetness and sharp pain. He stared at Zhou Xian in disbelief. "I'm the patriarch of Qing family. If you kill me, Qing family, Northern Waves continent, will not let you off." His words made the faces of the representatives of the surrounding forces that had followed him turn even paler. They hurriedly kept their distance from the Qing family. Could it be that the head of the Qing family had been beaten senseless? How dare he speak to the overlord in such a tone? Lord Dizun even dared to destroy the Northern Wave royal family and the Battle King's residence. Why would I be afraid of a small Qing family? Before coming, the representatives of these forces were indeed hoping for a fluke. If the overlord was really poisoned, they seized the opportunity to take the Dizun hostage and take away his power. But now, everyone could see that. The overlord who had such a strong aura, how could he have been poisoned? It's all that damned Qing family's patriarch's fault. He had instigated them to cause trouble for his majesty. Everyone cursed Qing family's patriarch 100 times in their hearts. They couldn't wait for Zhou Xian to flatten the Qing family and then let them off. "I'm very curious. If I kill you, what will the Northern Waves continent do? Won't they let me off?" Zhou Xian smiled coldly. Immediately he waved his palm again. That palm turned into a horrifying air wave. It fell straight on Qing family's patriarch's chest. Qing family's patriarch didn't even have time to scream. Chapter 2672. Even the representatives who were used to seeing bloodshed couldn't suppress the fear in their hearts. They were afraid that the next moment the person who turned into minced meat would be them. That's right. The person in front of them. He was rumored to be a temperamental, decisive legend. The Overlord. In this Nirvana realm, no one could resist the Overlord if he wanted to kill anyone. What was wrong with their brains? They actually followed Qing family's patriarch to test the Overlord. Whether he was poisoned by the Miao tribe's venom. Such a powerful Overlord, how did he look like someone who was poisoned? The group of people knelt together as they trembled in fear, begging for Zhou Xian's forgiveness. Suddenly, one of the representatives saw someone from the corner of his eyes. His eyes lit up as he crawled towards that direction. Miss Yi. Miss Yi, I beg you to persuade the Overlord. We know we're wrong, we shouldn't be blinded by greed. Everything is Qing family's patriarch's fault. When one of them knelt down and begged Yiqing Luo. When the others saw this, they seemed to have found the only way out as they swarmed towards Yiqing Luo. Miss Yi. I beg you to persuade the Overlord. As long as you speak, the Overlord will let us off. Even if we have to work like cows or horses, we will repay Miss Ye's kindness. These people were very clear. How much did the Overlord dote on Yi Luo? It was said that a lady's heart was the softest. As long as Yi Luo was willing to speak for them, the Overlord would definitely let them off for Yi Luo. Everyone treated Yiqing Luo as their only hope. But no one noticed Yiqing Luo's slightly pale face. Yiqing Luo looked at the group of people in front of her as she resisted the urge to kick them all out. But at the same time she couldn't help but to sneak a peek at Zhou Xian. The current Zhou Xian. He couldn't remember who she was. This group of people were begging her for help. If Zhou Xian made her lose her face on the spot, then he would draw a clear line between them. If this was spread out, she was already tired of being played with by the Overlord and was abandoned. This bit of gossip to her didn't matter at all. This was considered as the best outcome. But if someone with ulterior motives found out, then the consequences would be severe. How would Zhou Xian choose? It had been a long time since Yiqing Luo was this anxious. But even after a long while, Zhou Xian did not open his mouth. He just used that pair of indifferent peach blossom eyes to stare at her unblinkingly. It was as if he wanted to see through her shell and into her soul. The voices of the representatives of the various factions pleading for leniency kept ringing in his ears. Yiqing Luo pressed the area between her eyebrows, which was throbbing in pain, as she took a deep breath. Her charming eyes flickered with a calm glint as her voice remained calm. There's no use in begging me. You should be very clear that the Overlord's decision will not change because of anyone. When the last word fell, Yiqing Luo's slender fingers unconsciously curled up a little. Miss Yi, you're different. The Overlord dotes on you so much. As long as you asked, he will definitely let us go. This was the only way for them to survive. These people naturally wouldn't give up just because of Yiqing Luo's rejection. Yiqing Luo's pink lips pursed as she opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. If it was a normal day, she might as well send them flying with a kick. She couldn't be bothered to listen to their pleas for help. But now it concerned Zhou Xian. Chapter 2673. Yiqing Luo was still thinking of the best countermeasure in her mind. Suddenly, there was a sound of cold air being sucked in from the surrounding. Yiqing Luo was stunned and seemed to have thought of something as she turned her head sideways. Sure enough, she saw a noble man dressed in a flowing purple robe walking over gracefully. As the man walked, the purple robe swayed with an overbearing pressure. It made the various powerhouses' representatives who were kneeling around Yiqing Luo started to crawl to one side, opening up a path. The man's footsteps were slow and heavy. He walked all the way to Yiqing Luo before he stopped. The familiar and elegant sandalwood scent seeped into Yiqing Luo's nose. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly tightened. You. Her pink lips moved slightly as she nervously pursed them. Her enchanting eyes fell on the man's body without blinking. He suddenly walked over. What did he mean? Not allowing Yiqing Luo to think too much, her shoulder was suddenly hooked firmly by a strong and powerful arm. Following that, Yiqing Luo was pulled into a warm and broad embrace. The man's sandalwood scent assaulted her nostrils. It made Yiqing Luo's heart palpitate non-stop. Beside her ear, the man's voice seemed to be soaked in wine. As long as you say it, I will definitely let them off. He laughed softly. His laughter was filled with infinite ridicule. Yiqing Luo's heart, which was beating faster because of his embrace, at this moment returned to peace. Her petite body stiffened slightly as she raised her head from his embrace. She met with that pair of peach blossom eyes which were filled with foolishness. For pairs of eyes met. Zhou Xian's arms suddenly increased the strength as he tightened his grip on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. His voice became even lower. Why? Never thought that your lies to the outside world would be exposed in front of me? Yiqing Luo was stunned. He thought that this group of people would plead with her and persuade him. Just because she deliberately didn't have any bottom line and announced to the outside world that their relationship wasn't shallow? She obviously knew that he didn't remember her, which was why he did this. But Yiqing Luo's heart would still feel a throbbing pain which made her legs go weak for a moment. Zhou Xian's hand tightened around her, putting all of Yiqing Luo's weight on his body. What followed was his mocking laughter by her ear. What? Feeling guilty? Yiqing Luo's complexion paled by a few shades. The crowd by the side only saw the intimate interaction between Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo. How could she feel that the atmosphere between the two of them was completely different from the sweet love they used to have? They felt that they had asked the right person. Immediately, all of them started to beg Yiqing Luo once again. Zhou Xian didn't even bother to look at them as his gaze was locked onto Yiqing Luo's face. His black pupils flashed with a gloomy light. Bit by bit it flickered. This face. Compared to the women who had tried to seduce him in the past, he was definitely not good-looking. However, it had an indescribable attraction to him. It made him do things that even he himself couldn't believe. For example, now walking to her side and hugging her in his embrace. "Miss Yi, I'm begging you, please help us plead for leniency. We will do our best to repay you. This time Qing family's matter, we will also join hands to settle it and not let the overlord be affected at all." Those people were desperately begging for help. This was their only chance. They all wanted to live on. Chapter 2674. Not to let Zhou Xian be affected at all. Which meant they would join hands and push the blame of Qing family's patriarch's death onto herself. This was the best-case scenario. The current Zhou Xian was being corroded by the centrifugal worm. They didn't know if the centrifugal worm would cause Zhou Xian to have any other strange reactions. If Qing family really wanted to find Zhou Xian for Qing family's patriarch's death, the risk was too huge. It was hard to guarantee that Zhou Xian wouldn't be detected. She clenched her fingers but didn't shift her gaze away as she looked at him. Silence. The strange atmosphere lingered between the two of them. Everyone had finally recovered some rationality from the fear of death. They had also finally sensed the strange atmosphere. Momentarily they all shut their mouths. Although they didn't speak, but their peripheral vision would occasionally glance at Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo. They were all guessing in their hearts. This Yi Luo. The overlord had threatened to pamper her till she was out of control. Could it be that she quarreled with the overlord? Just as everyone was wondering if they should go and beg the overlord for help, a voice suddenly rang out. They saw the overlord suddenly hooking his arm around Yiqing Luo's slender waist as a teasing smile surfaced on his peerless face. "If Lil Luo personally pleads for you, I will naturally let you off." Not knowing why. The moment he saw Yiqing Luo, he wanted to call her name. Lil Luo, these three words blurted out. But it didn't hinder him from continuing to act according to this young lady's script. When the three words Lil Luo came out from Zhou Xian's mouth, Yiqing Luo's pupils subconsciously constricted. He still knew to call her Lil Luo? The man met Yiqing Luo's astonished gaze as his thin lips curled upwards. He was still smiling evilly. His slender fingers lifted the young lady's chin. He bent his head and got close to her. His voice was bewitching and alluring. "After all, you are this lord's beloved woman." He intentionally emphasized the word beloved. Others couldn't tell. But Yiqing Luo absolutely could tell. He was mocking her. Mocking her for overestimating herself. Yiqing Luo's fingers trembled. Then she lowered her head, avoiding Zhou Xian's oppressive gaze as she moved her lips. "And then I'll take it that you've let them off." This group of people had little to do with her. But after all, they were the representatives of the major powers from all over the world. If all of them died in Zhou Xian's hands, even if they were afraid of Zhou Xian's strength, Zhou Xian's actions had incurred the wrath of the masses. It would more or less affect Zhou Xian. Before Miao Yi found a way to cure the goo, she could not allow Zhou Xian to appear in front of the public, especially in front of those forces that had a grudge against the imperial palace. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo didn't even bother to take a look at Zhou Xian, but instead pulled away the hand that was wrapped around her waist. She looked at the people kneeling on the ground and said indifferently, "Still not going to scram?" Everyone was stunned as they quickly looked at Zhou Xian. When they realized that Zhou Xian wasn't even looking at them, one by one they crawled up from the ground and ran out of the courtyard. Remember, Qing family's matter has nothing to do with the overlord, otherwise. Yiqing Luo didn't finish her sentence, but the threat in her tone was obvious. Yes, Miss Yi, we absolutely don't dare. Don't dare. Chapter 2675. Yiqing Luo calmly turned around and raised her eyes to look at Zhou Xian. Her lips curled into a sweet smile. That's natural, after all, I'm your beloved woman. Zhou Xian's brows sunk suddenly. That mouth of his was quite sharp. She actually used the same words to block his words. His gaze went past Yiqing Luo, looking at those fleeing figures. A murderous intent flashed past his eyes. He didn't like the feeling of being controlled by others, especially when it was controlled by this young lady who made him feel different. She wanted him to let those people go. Then he would not let them go. An evil smile overflowed from Zhou Xian's brows. He raised his hand and profound qi expanded, turning into billowing air waves as it shot out. Just at this moment, a soft little hand suddenly pressed down on his arm. That hand was as soft as a ball of cotton. It looked like it had no strength at all. However, she forcefully pushed his hand back. The sudden surge of terrifying profound energy was actually suppressed by this little hand for no reason. Zhou Xian's entire body froze. His eyes were gloomy and his expression was getting colder and colder. From the corner of his eyes, he looked at his suppressed hand. Damn it! Who on earth was this young lady? How dare she provoke his prestige time and time again? Did she really treat herself as his beloved concubine? For this lord. Zhou Xian, who had just spat out these 3 words, had no chance to continue. His lips were ruthlessly sealed by a pair of warm lips. Yiqing Luo's one hand pressed on Zhou Xian's hand. The other hand hooked onto Zhou Xian's neck. Tiptoeing bit by bit, she kissed him in the way that Zhou Xian once kissed her. The young lady's sweetness and fragrance made Zhou Xian unable to react in time to push her away. On the contrary, he felt a trace of a very familiar smell. So familiar that, in his mind, a faint silhouette appeared. As if before this, he had once kissed a lady so intimately. That silhouette gradually became clearer. Vaguely, he seemed to see a devastatingly beautiful face. Oh! Suddenly, Zhou Xian felt a sharp pain in his heart. The images in his mind suddenly dispersed. He suddenly pushed the girl in front of him away. His tall body staggered back a few steps. He stared at Yiqing Luo, as though he was looking at another person through Yiqing Luo. His body could not help but tremble. Ripples of light surged in his black peach blossom eyes, like tumbling whirlpools. Wave after wave, it was unstoppable. He tried to recall the outline he had just remembered. But the more he thought about it, his heart ached even more. This kind of pain was not physical pain. Instead, it was a soul-tearing pain. His body seemed to be unable to control itself. Ah Xian. After Yiqing Luo was pushed away, looking at Zhou Xian in front of her, her heart felt as though it was being strangled by something unbearably tight. Qing Luo, come back. Miao Yi grabbed hold of Yiqing Luo's hand in time. The centrifugal venom is fighting with his consciousness. It should be that kiss of yours earlier which made his memories of you return. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted, even a breath made her heart ache. Then what should we do? The Overlord's willpower will absolutely be able to withstand the centrifugal venom, don't worry. When Miao Yi said this sentence, she actually had no confidence in her heart. Towards the ancestors' forbidden venom, she didn't understand much. Chapter 2676. Yiqing Luo's heart wrenched. Especially when she saw Zhou Xian's red eyes. His facial features were slightly distorted due to the pain. Her heart skipped a beat. She had used up all her energy. Then she suppressed herself and rushed towards Zhou Xian. She knew that the closer she got to Zhou Xian, it would only cause him more pain. Through the centrifugal worm, I am even more certain that the Overlord's love for you is really. Miao Yi looked at Zhou Xian and struggled for a long time, unable to find an adjective. Finally, she spat out 4 words. No one can compare to him. Yes, no one could compare to him. No one could compare to Demo Xian's love for Yiqing Luo. The centrifugal worm not only makes the overlord forget about you, but also makes him more and more distant from you, and even has murderous intent towards you. And until now, although he is very cold towards you, but his subconscious, his body, even his soul, are all uncontrollably in love with you. Miao Yi sighed as she looked at Yiqing Luo. If it was anyone else like me or any other woman in this courtyard who dared to use his name to show off, dare to get close to him, dare to touch him, would definitely be dismembered by the overlord. Without hesitation. Miao Yi's words were definitely not a casual comforting remark. It was the real truth. The overlord would absolutely not allow any woman to get close to him. Even Feng Ling, who was once spread by numerous people in Nirvana realm to be the future mistress of the imperial palace, was not allowed to get too close to Demo Xian. Even if she got close, that was on account of the imperial palace's granny. It could be said. Over at Demo Xian, who had forgotten about Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo was the first so daring to touch him and even molest him as a stranger. Obviously, he would have a strong murderous intent towards Yiqing Luo. But it was because of Demo Xian's love. Forcefully suppressed those murderous intents. This was enough to show how deep Demo Xian's love for Yiqing Luo was. Ugh. Suddenly, Demo Xian's pupils contracted. One hand clutching his heart, his body fell backwards, and just like that he fell straight down. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo was horrified by what she saw, as a feeling of needles piercing densely into her heart, spreading to her limbs and bones. She couldn't hold back any longer. She shook off Miao Yi's hand and flew forward. Ah Xian. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo hugged Demo Xian's head with one hand as she looked at his extremely pale complexion as her eyes turned red. Demo Xian shut his eyes, and between his brows, there were several layers of wrinkles. Clearly, even though he had fainted, he was still suffering. Ah Xian, what's the matter with him? Yiqing Luo speedily turned her head around and looked at Miao Yi. Miao Yi was also shocked by Demo Xian's sudden fainting. Meeting with Yiqing Luo's pair of eyes which were filled with worry, he stammered, Maybe it's because of resisting against the centrifugal force Gu, exhausting all his energy. He'll be fine after a short rest. Yiqing Luo held Demo Xian's hand tightly as she looked at Demo Xian. Her reddened eyes turned even redder. Send the overlord back to his room to rest. Suddenly, a calm and deep voice was heard, revealing an unquestionable pressure. It was Ghost Marshal.